Culture for many is a central characteristic of identity defined as the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. But what if someone is living between two cultures? Trapped between rejection from both sides, isolation from the rest of the world. Being caught between two cultures, especially when you're trying to get by in an unfamiliar environment, can cause one to pick a side and lose a part of yourself. This TED-Ed lesson will provide insight into many challenges that exist for people living in or between two or more cultures and how poetry can capture this. In order to display the effect and power poetry has to capture these challenges, we will refer to translucent jade. What challenges exist for people living in or between two cultures and how can poetry capture this? Poetry as a whole is used as a platform by writers all around the world to share their stories, opinions, and feelings. The nature of language, being written or spoken words to express thought, is the primary method of self-expression or identity in culture for an individual and collective group. Poetry uses the nature of language and language techniques to not only express individual and collective experiences and beliefs, but incorporates language techniques in order for the audience to resonate, empathize, and reflect on the experiences expressed in the poem. Translucent Jade is a poem by Maureen Ten in which she depicts her feelings towards her experience between cultures of Malaysia, Australia, and China. She uses personal anecdotal stories to display the need she felt to lose part of her cultural identity. She describes a gift that was made and given to her when she was born, until, quote, another gift, my mother's, flashed in view, end quote. It is revealed in the final line of the poem that the gift she was referring to was a name. This is about how she was given a Chinese name, Ten Shi Yu, but later changed it to a more Western name, Maureen Ten, given by her mother in order to fit in better within Australian society. It reflects how she felt distant from her Asian culture, and felt guilty about calling herself by a name her grandfather gave her. Quote, I felt like an imposter, end quote, for not using it her entire life. I personally interpret this poem as a personal reflection by the author on her life decisions and how they affected her identity and resignation with her Asian and Australian cultures. Quote, what vibrations are these? Does this begin to become me? Do I belong? End quote. Is a quote from the final stanza that supports the idea of personal reflection and Maureen Ten trying to distinguish her Asian cultural identity. The author of Translucent Jade used a large amount of sensory imagery to describe experiences and engage the reader to feel involved in the poem, focusing on sound. Examples include saying the gift sparkled and sang, and that she retrieved his gift from its silence, as well as heard stories and slowly yielding music. The entire poem revolves around a metaphor of the names being gifts. Using metaphor relates to challenges people living between two cultures face by comparing cultural features, in this case a traditional name, to physical items, in this case what is assumed to be a jade jewelry piece. Comparing culture to tangible items implies that similar to tangible items, culture can also be lost, found, or discarded. She also uses repetitions of sometimes I, and rhyme in barely, rarely used, it seems mostly new, appropriately within the poem for structure and flow to engage the audience in the struggle and challenges depicted. Overall, poetry is a highly effective platform to express the experience of people living between two or more cultures. It is a sense of disconnection and isolation, feelings we have all experienced, including myself, with the people I interact with around me despite the physical similarities. Maureen Ten reflects on her culture and identity in her personal and public worlds, and so should everyone else.